All right, I think we're back on. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug, and we are the Wakened by Yahuwah Assembly, Yahuwah Almighty Yahushua Messiah. For those of you that watched earlier, we did our Sabbath day study. Now, since we have a little bit of extra time, just because the chapters we read were very short for through chapter Sabbath reading, we figured with extra time, we might as well do a part 3 of this study we've been going through, this series we've been going through. It is called Areas That the Targums, Samaritan Pentateuch, Vulgate, and the Dead Sea Scrolls agree with the Septuagint. So this is a study to really prove the supremacy of the Septuagint, the supremacy of the Septuagint over the Masoretic. Because these are going to be areas where you're going to see multiple manuscripts, or at least one of these manuscripts, agreeing with the Septuagint against the Masoretic text. So here we go. Let me get the document up for you guys here. Here we go. So we're at part 3 now. Now, I recommend people that have not seen this series yet, that you guys check out the playlist. I would recommend really going into the playlist, and the playlist is called Proof of the Supremacy of the Septuagint version of the Tanakh. So go to that playlist. You'll see our part 1 and part 2 we've already done. This is going to be part 3. We're going to be in the book of Exodus here, and we're going to show you guys a couple of key things here. I don't know why it went to there. Sometimes it does that. It tends to do that for some reason. Let me just see here. If I went to File Open, part 3. Okay, so here's part 3. We're going to start off actually in Genesis, not Exodus. So we're going to start off here in Genesis 2:9 and 2:10. So we're going to start off there. So what I'll do for you guys here is I'll put it on the Word software here. There we go. Genesis 2:9. This thing wants to act up. Yeah, I've noticed the Word software wants to act up today. Huh. Interesting. All right, so let me see here. Let's go to the Word software again here. Every once in a while it wants to act up. Pure accept. Okay, so Genesis 2:9 and 10. As you can see here, I got the Vulgate, Septuagint, and Masoretic all parallel with one another. So I'm going to show you something here. It says here, and this is a minor difference, but it's still a difference. And from the soil, Yahuwah Eluah produced every tree that was beautiful to behold, pleasant to eat, and every tree of life that was in the midst of paradise. Notice how it says paradise there. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Paradise is not in there. Masoretic will just say midst of the garden. Now this is where I have to change the version of the Septuagint I'm reading because the Complete Apostles Bible sometimes they um, let me see here. My bad about this. Hold on a second. So let me go to Brenton's here. I'm gonna go to LXXE because that should that should. I don't know why they have all the way down there. Okay. Yes. So it says paradise instead of garden. So the reason that the Vulgate and the Septuagint probably say paradise is because in the Hebrews context, paradise, when Yahushua says, "Today you will be with me in paradise," paradise was used in the Greek translation of the scriptures to describe either the Garden of Eden or or Abraham's bosom. It was either or. So that's why when people say to me, well, Yahusha told us that when we die, we will be with him in paradise because of the thief. I'm like, no. First of all, there was no commas in the original scriptures, number one. Number two, paradise, nowhere in these scriptures is heaven called paradise. Nowhere. Old or New Testament, you will not find a verse for that. That is a what I would call it a assertion, a assumption at best. There's no verse that is called that. So this is what I mean by we got to start unlearning doctrines of men. Okay. But the Septuagint is very useful here because it's calling the Garden of Eden paradise here in Genesis 2:9 and 2:10. It is telling you that's what it defines as paradise. So anyway, so your only two options according to the Hebraic thought and the Bible is either Yahusha in on the stake was talking about, which I doubt he would be talking about the Garden of Eden because that's not where you go when you die. You really actually let me correct myself. There's only one option when he's saying you will be with me today in paradise. If you interpret it as meaning literally today, then that has to be talking about Abraham's bosom. It has to be to agree with the rest of Scripture and the Bible as a whole. That's what he has to be talking about. He's talking about Sheol and Abraham's bosom and all that. So I just wanted to point that out. Um, so let me see here. Uh, yeah, here we go. So it says here. Um, Now, for some reason here, the Vulgate says paradise, and Breton didn't choose the word paradise here, so that's a little weird. Let me see if they're if that has to do with a translation issue. Hold on a second. Okay. So going back to this, so we see here paradise is identified as Eden. Now, what I don't like is Breton seems to translate it as Eden when the Vulgate is saying paradise. So that's a little weird. I just want to see if Breton's being honest with the Greek text here because that's a little strange to me. Okay, so yeah, if you go to the ABP, this is where we're gonna have to use the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, which is it's a Greek Orthodox Bible canon. So the ABP also uses the LXX, and for whatever reason, Breton decided there to deviate from what the Greek actually says. I don't know why he did that. Really doesn't help what we're trying to do here. So he really doesn't make it easy for me here. Okay. So, but as you can see here, whoops, I did not want the Greek ABP. I wanted the translation of it. There we go. My bad, guys. Okay, so as you can see here, the ABP, as well as the Vulgate, paradise. So it says, and a river goes forth from Eden to water the paradise. From there, it separates into four sources, meaning four heads. So again, the Septuagint, instead of just calling it the garden, calls it paradise, which again gives a better understanding of why Yahusha would use the term paradise in that context and all that. But hold on, guys, I see my battery is dying. Hold on a second. I could have swore this thing must have got disconnected somehow. Yeah, it got disconnected. Okay. There we go. Okay, now it's working again. All right, so hopefully, hopefully, uh, let's see here. Hopefully we'll be fine. Now, Genesis 3:16 to me is a really big deal in difference of doctrine. This is where the Masoretic text will get you into trouble. And I do have a cross-reference here to show how the Masoretic text contradicts itself. So we'll go to that verse first in chapter 2, verse 24. And we're going to show you how Genesis 3:16 in the Masoretic would contradict this verse. It says here, Genesis 2:24, because of this shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And I think all of us would agree that part two becoming one flesh has to do with intimacy, has to do with it's a sexual verbiage. Okay. So the idea of a woman strongly desiring her husband in a intimacy, physical intimacy matter goes all the way back before the fall, right? It says it right there. Okay. They will become one flesh. So it's Yahuwah's will for her and her husband to desire to want to be one. Okay. In a physical and spiritual concept. So taking that away from the text, let's actually go to Genesis 3:16, keeping that context, okay? Now, Genesis 3:16, and some translations know there's an issue here, and some of them, they try to paraphrase it like the NLT does, and we'll get to that. So they understand the Masoretic causes a problem with this verse. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So in Genesis 3:16, it says, to the woman he also said, I will multiply your labors in your conceptions. In pain shall you give birth to your sons. And if you look at both the Septuagint and the Vulgate, both are talking about submission. Okay. The Vulgate says, you shall be under your husband's power, and he shall have dominion over you. Septuagint says, your submission shall be to your husband, and he will dominate you. Both are talking about submission. The Masoretic then says, and your desire shall be to your husband. Whoa, what? What do you mean? Her desire wasn't for her husband before this? So this causes a whole big issue here. So what? She's not going to have sexual desire for him before the fall. She only had it because of the fall. It creates a huge theological problem. And it takes away the concept that from the fall, from then on, women are to be under men. It totally takes that out too. That women should be submitted to their husband, and their husband is to have authority over them. So it almost like halfway throws out the headship concept of Messiah, husband, wife, child. That's how it's supposed to be. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Masoretic text version of Genesis 3:16 because it creates at least two major theological issues. One makes you think a woman did not strongly sexually desire her husband before the fall, and that it's part of the curse, which doesn't make any sense. And it seems to take away from the submission aspect. That this is Yahuwah commanding Eve, that she is to submit, to be under her husband. So clearly that's showing that, yeah. So anyway, so just wanted to explain why Genesis 3:16 is like such a an issue with the Masoretic text. Anyway, now going forward here, I think the rest of this portion is going to be from Exodus here. So we have LXX Dead Sea Scrolls say 75. So the LXX has 75 for the number of children of Yashua that went out of Egypt into the, that went into the land of Egypt, that came back, that Yahuwah took from the Exodus. So according to Exodus 1:5, the LXX, both the LXX and the Dead Sea Scrolls say 75 souls of Yashrael went down into Egypt. Okay. So it says, but Joseph was in Egypt, and all the souls of Jacob were 75. So we have both the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls saying 75, which is again reiterated in Genesis 46. It's 27 here. Yeah, so Genesis 46:27, it says, and the sons of Joseph who were born to him in the land of Egypt were 9 souls. All the souls of the house of Jacob who went with Joseph into Egypt were 75 souls. So again, 75. And then if you go into the book of Acts, chapter 7, Acts 7:14, and when the apostles of Jerusalem heard that the people of the Samaritans had received the word of Eluah. Okay, my bad. I'm reading the wrong chapter here. It's chapter 8. Right, 7 verse 14 here. And Joseph sent and brought his father Jacob and all his family, and they were 75 souls in number. So what happens is the Masoretic text in both that verse from Genesis and Exodus decide to change 75 to 70. Now, I don't really know exactly why they would want to do that, but they do do that. The Septuagint and the Samaritan Pentateuch, now going to chapter 2, verse 6 of Exodus, the Septuagint and Samaritan Pentateuch call the one who raised Moses as the daughter of Pharaoh. Now, what's interesting here is the Masoretic conveniently leaves this out. So the Septuagint, both Septuagint and Samaritan Torah say, having opened it, she sees the baby weeping in the ark, and the daughter of Pharaoh had compassion on it and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Now, for whatever reason, the Masoretic decided to leave out the phrase "the daughter of Pharaoh." So what I find funny is most of these movies know that it was the daughter of Pharaoh that did this. So what I find funny, even in the Ten Commandments movie, they would have had to use either the Samaritan Torah or the Septuagint to accurately portray that in that scene. But anyway, now we're going to Exodus 6, verse 3. This is an interesting, very interesting difference here. I think regardless, this does not mean that the patriarchs did not know his name. I think this has been misunderstood because they don't understand the context here. So it says in Exodus 6, verse 3, and I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, being their Elohim, but I did not manifest to them my name, Yahuwah. Now, there's multiple versions that phrase it that way. Now, either there's one of two options. Either there was a corruption in the text, or which I like to go with, is that Yahuwah is referring to when he first revealed himself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He did not originally give his name to them. Not that he never ever did, or that it never after that point he did, but that when he first made himself known to them, they did not know his name. So what I mean by that is that sometimes in the text you'll see it will say, whether the Masoretic will say Al Shaddai appeared to them, or this person, that person, like this title, that title. Usually, Yahuwah doesn't reveal his name to someone until he's like in full covenant with them. So I could see this verse being worded correctly here in the proper context of when he first made himself known to them. They did not know his proper name. They knew him as their mighty one, which is what the Septuagint says. It says, I appeared to them as being their Elohim, but I did not manifest to them my name, Yahuwah. So what he's saying is, in context, when I first made myself known to them, they just knew me as their mighty one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right.
So, not necessarily does that mean that he never gave them his name. So, the verse doesn't literally say that. Okay? So, what camera was it? All right. Exodus 6, verse 8. Let's see here. So both the Septuagint and the Onkelos say right hand, lofty arm. Masoretic text has it omitted. So what do I mean here is that it mentions Yahuwah's lofty hand or his lofty arm in this verse. The Masoretic text has it omitted. So we'll say here, I will bring you into the land concerning which I stretched out my hand to give it to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and I will give it to you for inheritance. I am Yahuwah. So the reason this is important is because this is showing Yahusha in the Old Testament. The Masoretic leaves out the word right hand or lofty arm. So the Masoretic would just say, verse 8 here in Exodus 6. I will bring you into the land concerning which I did swear to give it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you for inheritance. I am Yahuwah. So there's no mention about the right hand. But if you go to the Septuagint, it says, by his right hand, I will give it to Abraham. So what does that really say? Who's really giving it? Yahusha's
Yeah.
given it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the Masoretic text wouldn't want you to know that. The Targum of Onkelos as a second witness. Therefore, say you to the sons of Israel, I am Yahuwah, and I will bring you out of the midst of the sore labor for the Mitzrites, and I will deliver you from their servitude and redeem you with a lofty arm and great judgments. Why does that matter? Because the Targums were written by who? Rabbis of the first to fourth centuries. So the rabbis of the first and fourth centuries understood the context of the oneness. They understood that there was this word of Yahuwah person, the lofty arm, the right hand, that Yahuwah sometimes by the word would deliver his people. So that's why it's important. And of course, the Masoretic text leaves that out conveniently. So now we're at Exodus 6:12. The LXX, so the LXX and the Targum on Kalos have hardness of speech or ineloquent, which makes a lot more sense in the context. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let me see here now. Just make sure. Do I have the right verse? So here we have Marsha saying, behold, the sons of Yashar have not received from me, and how then will Pharaoh receive, and I am so heavy of speech? And the Septuagint also will say that I am not eloquent of speech. What does this mean? This means that he's a nervous guy. He's not a good public speaker. And he's basically saying, I'm not going to know how to like relate this to them.
Right.
Like, I'm afraid. I'm a nervous guy. I'm not a sociable guy. Versus the Masoretic saying, I have uncircumcised lips, which makes no sense. Like, we're not, the context is not even talking about sin. It's talking about he's ineloquent. He can't, he's afraid to go to the people and say this to them because he thinks he's not going to be charismatic or he's not going to be able to, drive the point home or, so it's a whole different meaning. Like these two versions of the verse, there's a whole different meaning there. So anyway.
The uncircumcised list was more like what
Sin.
Isaiah said.
Yeah, sin. Had to do with sin.
Yeah.
Because he was ascribing his sin with the uncircumcised lips. Yeah, that's a different context. Exodus 6:20, it seems like Miriam is omitted from the text. The Septuagint and the Samaritan Torah, though, have her stated in verse 20 here. So it says here, Abraham took to wife Yoshebed. Oh, my bad, not Abraham. Amram took to wife Yoshebed, the daughter of his father's brother, and she bore to him both Aaron, Masha, and Miriam, their sister. The years of the life of Amram were 132 years. So both the Samaritan Torah and the Septuagint mention Miriam here. The Masoretic, for some weird reason, leaves her out.
He was cousin, right?
Yeah.
Daughter.
Well, no, it says Amram took Yoshebed, his father's sister's wife. So it would be the wife of his aunt. He took basically like a third, fourth removed cousin, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Always trying to figure out.
yeah, I'm not gonna try to figure that out. That's way too
Yeah,
much.
cousins were allowed. Yeah.
Exodus 6:30 again talks about the heart of speech or ineloquent. So again, the context there is that he's ineloquent. He's complaining to you. He's saying, I'm not going to be able to speak to these people. Okay. So, and again, the Masoretic text says uncircumcised lips, which makes no sense again. Okay. All right. So now we're at Exodus 9:9, where the the Septuagint and the Unkilos mention the beasts a second time. So here we have, we're at Exodus 9:9 here, and both the Septuagint and the Unkilos say, let it become dust over all the land of Egypt. Let there be upon men and upon beasts sore blains breaking forth both on men and on beasts in all the land of Egypt. So, and on beasts is only in the Septuagint and the Unkilos. Oh, Shabbat Shalom, brother Yahusha, go ahead.
Hey, special. I just saw y'all on YouTube. I thought y'all were like done, so I was
Oh, it's okay.
over there, but I saw you started up a second study.
Yeah, we the chapters were very short, so it was like we were done by like what, Mom, like 3:07 or something.
I guess.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like I think we got started around
After.
2.
Short chapter.
So it only took us an hour to go through 3 chapters.
Yeah,
So I was like,
yeah.
you know what?
May as
So
well do something.
yeah. So we're just doing a part 3 here of the places that these other manuscripts agree with the Septuagint over the Masoretic. So we're actually almost halfway done with this part as well. We're about at Exodus 9:9, and I'm noticing that beasts is left out of the text a second time, where it's talking about all these always talks about the sore blains breaking forth both men and on beasts in all the land of Egypt. The Masoretic seems to leave out and on beasts. So it seems to. Yep, go ahead.
What were y'all referring to when you said cousins were allowed?
Well, like my mom was making a joke because technically Yahuwah sometimes would have Israelites like marry their 3rd and 4th cousins. Like it would be like
Because I think in the
3rd, 4th,
law, he
3rd,
doesn't say
yeah.
anything about
3rd,
cousins.
3rd, 4th removed or something like that.
Right.
Because right,
I don't think it says anything about cousins, period.
yeah.
It's making me laugh because I got a
Yeah.
quick little story here. My brother and I were adopted, right? But there was this part of the family that we just liked hanging out with, when we went to Canada. And this one cousin of mine, her and my brother they always liked to hang out. She was like a tomboy, and they always liked to hang out together. My brother loved the farm, so they were always together. Well, they came down to visit us in New Jersey, and it was obvious that they were kind of, really enjoying. They went out on a date when they went to a movie together, and it was so funny because the family was calling them kissing cousins and all this kind of stuff, and it's just it kind of reminded me of that whole thing, like cousins. Oh goodness.
I got on YouTube and I heard y'all talking about that. I just thought it was just
Yeah.
same thing that we were talking about today. I noticed that Leah and Hall were Yakub's cousins, first cousins.
Yeah.
Leah and who?
Leah and Rachel.
Rachel.
Yeah, because you also had Abraham marrying Sarah. Sarah was a distant relative of some sort. A lot of them they would marry usually like if their father had a niece, they would sometimes marry their father's niece or or their aunt's daughter, something like that. Like it's very far removed at that point. Like it's they're. Yahuwah was mainly, from what my understanding is, he was mainly concerned about like really like within the what's it called, your actual direct like lineage of your parents. He wasn't really worried about if you have to marry like a distant relative. Yahuwah was mainly worried about don't cover the nakedness of your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, your grandparents.
No.
your uncle, your aunt. But if your aunt has a daughter and you have a son, you know,
Yeah,
it's different. So I think that's where people get confused because the world talks about kissing cousins and all that. But first of all, a lot of people don't understand genetics and they don't understand how genetics of the human genome got worse and worse throughout time. That's why kissing cousins, does what it does. And usually, to be honest, with the deformities, that has to do with like first cousins, usually.
yes, when it's that close, yeah,
Usually.
blindness and things like that.
I would have
yeah.
to check myself with
Yeah,
the genome stuff, but I'm pretty sure it has to do with like a lot of that in the South is like brothers and sisters and like first cousins.
yeah, that's a little too close. It's a
Yeah,
little
but if
close.
my uncle, let's say my uncle's wife has a daughter my age, that's
Mhm.
not exactly the same thing as first cousins getting married. It's not exactly the same thing genetically speaking.
Mhm.
It's not
It's all
the same
very
thing.
interesting.
So, but yeah, that's what my mom was bringing up about that because we got into Exodus, I think it was 6, where Miriam is left out of the genealogy of I think it was 6 or 8. Let me go back to the doc here, where they leave her out. The Masoretes leave her out.
It's not nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There's a couple of women they don't like. There's a couple. I'm telling you right now, there's a couple of women that they seem to have a problem with. They seem to have a problem with Masha's wife. So let me just see here really quick. Part of speech, we already talked about that versus circumcised lips. Oh, here we go. 6 verse 20. Yeah, so Exodus 6 verse 20, the Septuagint and the Samaritan Pentateuch both have Miriam and the Masoretic doesn't. When they're talking about the lineage of Yoshebed and Amram. So, yeah. Let's see here. I think we're at 10 verse 15 here now. So, we're at this part here. We're almost done with part 3 here. Probably end after part 3. Let's see here. So Exodus 10:15 says, and they covered the face of the earth, and the land was wasted. They devoured all the herbage of the land and the fruit of the trees which was left by the hail. There was no green thing left on the trees, nor on the herbage of the field, in all the land of Egypt. So I think what I noticed here was in the Septuagint and the Vulgate, it says the land was wasted. And it seems like the Masoretes leave that part out. Let me just check that real quick. 10 verse 15. Yeah, wasted. So the land was wasted. Oh yeah, the Masoretic says darkened. That gives a whole different.
Mhm.
So it's just the land's dark. That's it. It's not talking about the Eretz, the earth being destroyed, like as in like, a lot of these plagues were destroying the ground. It's destroying, the herbage and all the crops and all that. It seems like the Septuagint and the Vulgate bring that out, while the Masoretic just has you believe, oh well, it's just dark. There's just darkness over Egypt. That's it. Um, which I believe they show that in the movies, right? Usually it's the Masoretic version of the narrative they show, where it's just there's darkness over the land of Egypt. There's no mention about the crops being destroyed and
No,
all of that. So I find that interesting.
yeah.
So it seems to be like a lot of what they show in these movies is based on the Masoretic narrative. But yeah, that's Exodus 10:15 there. Verse 23 also. It seems like the Masoretic leaves out the word brother here. Exodus 10:23, LXX, Targum Onkelos, and Vulgate all say brother. So let's see here. Excuse me. Yes. For 3 days no man saw his brother. No man rose up from his bed for 3 days, but all the children of Yashua had light in all the places where they were. Now this makes a lot of sense because this is, when you understand that the Israelites were on a separate part of the land, it makes sense that no man would be able to see his brother for 3 days, because it's talking about the Egyptians, that there was darkness over Egypt. So obviously in Egypt you only had Egyptians, and you would have, that part of Egypt would only have Egyptians or Mitzrites. So it's saying that no man could see his brother, for 3 days. So it makes it more specific, I guess is my point. Versus they saw not one another. So anyways, so let me see here. Okay, so we got Exodus 11, verse 1. Septuagint and Samaritan Pentateuch say raiment or clothing. This is something I caught the other day. There's times where the Septuagint will say clothing when the Masoretic will say jewels or what have you. Let's see here. Yeah, so here we go. It says here, therefore speak secretly in the ears of the people. Let everyone ask of his neighbor jewels of silver, gold, and clothing. So, jewels of silver, gold, and clothing we have here. The Masoretic does not have clothing. So I think the Septuagint is the one that has it, and the Samaritan Pentateuch has clothing also in there. So, Exodus 12, verse 6, as the Septuagint and Vulgate have the word toward. So let's see what makes such a difference there with that. Exodus 12, verse 6. And it shall be kept to you till the 14th of this month, and all the congregations of the children of Yahshua shall kill it toward evening. Vulgate as well, toward evening. Masoretic, kill it in the evening. I don't know how you would do that. Yeah. See, this is where it gets really a problem with the Masoretic text, because some people will believe then you're not supposed to kill the lamb until it's already evening. So they would be killing it in that evening. So that means you're not eating the lamb until the following morning, or possibly later, like 7, 8 in the morning. Because if you're, let's just say, right, it's because right now what time is it for evening right now, Mom? 5:46.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So let's say they would have to wait after 5:46 or at 5:46 to start killing it and cooking it. By the time you're eating it, you're already talking about like past midnight. In actuality, Yahuwah says you are eating it in this very night, meaning you're not eating it in the morning. So the original account of the Passover agrees with the LXX and the Vulgate. There's no way to have it the following morning if Yahuwah is saying this very night you're eating it. The morning is not the evening. I think we would all agree with that. So that to me causes a major, in my personal opinion, theological issue in Exodus 12, verse 6. So Exodus 12, 22, 23 says the Targum, Pseudo-Jonathan, and the LXX agree. So let me just look at that, because I didn't write what it's actually saying there. So let me see here. So Exodus 12, 22. We only got a couple more cross references, guys. So just bear with me here. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop, having dipped it into some blood that is by the door, and you shall touch the lintel and it shall put upon the doorpost even of the blood, which is by the door, but none of you shall go out of the door of this house until morning. I'm trying to see what was different about. Yeah, I don't know. I might have got the verses wrong there. This doesn't look like anything's there. The only thing I see is that the Vulgate says entrance. So it gives more of an idea that this would be the doorpost that's at the entrance of your house. So that's the only thing I see really different. So I might get rid of that bullet point. I really don't see anything different there. Yeah, unless verse 23 has something. Just check verse 23. Who shall pass by to smite the Egyptians? You shall see the blood upon the lintel and the doorpost, and Yahuwah shall pass over. Yeah, I don't like how the complete Apostles Bible say pass over. I really that. Sometimes they love to cater to the Masoretic there. I'm not a big fan of that, especially when you're supposed to be a Septuagint translation. So it says here, and dip. Okay, let's go to verse 23 here. And Yahuwah will cross through, striking the Egyptians, and when he will see the blood on the upper threshold and both the doorposts. Oh, okay, so it is supposed to say Passover there. Okay. Pass by the door and shall not suffer the destroyer to enter into your houses to do harm. Okay, so there's actually no difference there either. So I was mistaken about those, but I'm glad I actually read that because there's a lot of people out there in the body that still think Yahuwah is the destroyer. This clearly shows he's not the destroyer. The destroyer is a separate person. It says that he will not allow the destroyer who just destroyed the firstborn of the Mitzrites. He's not going to allow him to enter the houses of the Israelites. So that at least is good to show because some people are deceived and think that, that Yahusha is the destroyer and all that. So let me see here. So we're at Exodus 13:5. Oh, this is something I caught the other day. So Exodus 13:5 in the LXX and the Samaritan Torah will say Girgashite and Perizzite. These two tribes, for some reason, the Masoretic text omits. Yeah, I know.
I love that.
I know the whole
About
joke,
the parasites.
Yeah, and the parasites, yeah, that's a whole Baptist joke, yeah.
Jim Staley likes that joke. He uses that. He goes, and all the parasites.
Yeah. See, the problem though is all of them are parasites, so, if you know anything about demons, all of them are parasites, so,
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Oh, I'm not getting enough sleep.
It's all right, you'll eventually get it.
Oh, goodness.
Eventually your body will give out and you'll finally get it.
Yeah, you crash. Eventually, you just crash.
Yeah. Excuse me. Let's see here. So here we go. We got the parasites and the Girgashites not mentioned in the Masoretic. So let me see here. For some reason, why is it not showing up here? Let's see. Did I write down the wrong verse? Oh, 13 verse 5, not 15. Okay, that's why. Okay, so Exodus 13:5. You have the Masoretic leaving out parasites and Girgashites here. So it says, when Yahuwah your Allah has brought you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, Hivites, Jebusites, Girgashites, Perizzites. which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall perform this service in this month. So this is talking about the Passover. And obviously, the only thing I can think of that the Mizrahites, why they would get rid of those two tribes, their rationale is probably, well, they're already dead at this point, so, which doesn't make sense though, because Exodus was written before any of those tribes were being killed, as far as I know. Exodus would have already been written before they're, wiping out these tribes. So the argument that those two tribes would have already been dead doesn't really make much sense. So, but I could see a pro-Mizrahite person might give you that excuse. They might try to say that. Exodus 13:9, LXX and Vulgate have the word before. So let's see what context that's talking about. And it will be like a sign in your hand and like a memorial before your eyes. So may the law of Yahuwah be always in your mouth. For with a strong hand Yahuwah led you away from the land of Egypt. So it says before your eyes. Again, so before your eyes is different than between your eyes. And again, this goes back to the whole cube, the rabbinical cube they would put on their forehead. That they believe they're supposed to write. And what's crazy is that the context of this is talking about the whole law of Yahuwah would be before your eyes or between your eyes. So they don't even do that. They write like a Shema or whatever they write. They definitely don't write the whole Torah and put it in that box. They write like, a couple of verses or whatever, put in that little, Saturn cube thing, and then they strap it to their forehead. And again, that's not even what the text is saying, even from the Masoretic. It's saying that it shall be a sign. A sign is not literal. So even if you go with the Masoretic, the way they changed the word before to between, still you got to look at it as an allegory because it's saying it shall be a sign. Just like the Sabbath is a sign. Even though we're physically keeping the Sabbath is an allegorical sign that we are his people and we belong to him. It's not a physical sign. We're not tattooed with the Sabbath, So that's the point I'm trying to make there. So the way that rabbinical Judaism interprets this verse, you can't even really get it from the Masoretic. It's more or less they're taking the word between and running with it and not even looking at the whole sentence. So, but just to let you know, prior versions to the Masoretic would say before your eyes, not between your eyes. So just wanted to point that out. Yeah. Exodus 14:31, LXX and Vulgate say great mighty hand, and here's the second time the Masoretic text wants to get rid of Yahusha and stop mentioning the great mighty hand. Okay. Exodus 14 verse 31. And they saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea, and the great hand they saw. The great hand that Yahuwah had exercised against them. And the people feared Yahuwah, and they believed in Yahuwah and in Masha, his servant. So let me see here. Yep, and the LXX here says, Yashar saw the mighty hand, which Yahuwah did to the Egyptians. And the people feared Yahuwah, and they believed Yahuwah and Masha, his servant. So again, the Masoretes leave that phrase out, the great mighty hand or lofty arm. They're doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
They're doing that on purpose, most likely because by the time the Masoretic text came out, they already rejected, you guys can check this for yourselves, you don't have to believe me, they would have already rejected the many-powered in heaven concept. They would have already rejected this idea that there's this other role within the Almighty known as the the Debar Yahuwah, the right hand, the lofty arm, that does these things. And even the Targums have it, but by the time you get to the Masoretic text, you're talking about 10th century, 9th century, 10th century AD. By that point, rabbinical Judaism is like really established. And really, where we get rabbinical Judaism today is really from the 10th century on. That's the modern Judaism, rabbinical Judaism beliefs that we have today really stem from the Masoretes and the rabbis of their time and all that. So anyway. Exodus 15, verse 2. LXX and Vulgate and the Peshitta do not include, I will build him a habitation. Now, I wouldn't say this is a nefarious addition by the Masoretes, but I do think it's possible that the Masoretes felt they needed to add something that was never there. And what do I mean by that is in Exodus 15:2 here, it says, Yahuwah is my strength, my praise. He has become my salvation. He is my Eluah, I shall esteem him. He is the Eluah of my father, and I shall exalt him. The majority of the versions stop with, I will exalt him. And there's no mentioning that I'm going to build him a habitation. But the Masoretes add that in there. My assumption would be they felt like, well, if David had the urge to build him a temple, why wouldn't Moses? But the problem is Moses never said that.
Yeah.
This is the only time we see that in the text. And every other earlier version does not have that phrase. So most likely the Masoretes, being rabbis and being rabbinical, they're like, oh, we need to add this in there to higher esteem Masha and to make sure that Masha is put on a huge pedestal. I think that was the whole purpose of that, because you don't see any other verse in the Masoretic even mentioning that Masha had in his heart a desire to make Yahuwah a house. You know what I'm saying? There's no other verse that talks about that. So the only thing I can think of is they felt like they wanted to make sure that no one else was esteemed higher than Masha. So they probably looked at it as, if David wanted to build him a house, wouldn't Masha want to build him a house?
Yeah.
So they probably, I'm giving them a little too much credit here. I might be giving them a little too much credit here, but they meant well with that addition, but you're still adding to the word.
Yeah.
And if he's never said it, he's never said it then. And
I mean, David was a slightly different relationship,
Yeah.
really. I mean,
well, I think too, Mom, is that they looked at the tabernacle as his house.
right.
So it's very possible in that period, in that agency of the tabernacle in the wilderness, why Moshe wouldn't think to build him a house, as Yahuwah already has a place where he's cohabitating with them. So that could be part of the issue too, is why Daud would have that desire that maybe Moshe, it didn't come into his mind to do that. But anyway, that's kind of like a difference. That's not a major difference, but it is adding to the word. It would seem that they've added to the word there. The LXX, the Vulgate, and the Onkelos lacks for you to dwell in. Again, talking about building a house for Yahuwah in that chapter. So the Vulgate, the Onkelos, and the LXX all lack that. So Ezekiel 21:13, LXX and Vulgate say Yahuwah Eluah. The Masoretic text says Adonai, and just to show you guys what I'm talking about here. So we'll go to Ezekiel 21:13. And I understand the tradition of them substituting with the all caps LORD. It's not that reliable. I get that they can make mistakes, but here I just find it interesting. Now, this is where I have to use the Sefer, because the Restored Name translators try to fix this. So what I'm going to have to do, I'm either going to have to use a Sefer, or I'm going to have to use a just regular King James, just to show you guys what I'm talking about here. into KJV 1611. All right, so and also select Vulgate. I don't know why Vulgate's not selected. So if you look at all three here, you go to verse 13 of Ezekiel 21, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. Verse 13 here, it says, For it has been tested, and this one, when he will have overthrown the scepter, will not be, says Yahuwah Alua. You see here in the Vulgate all the way to the left, in the middle of the Septuagint, Kurios Theos, Yahuwah Alua. And now what's interesting is the KJV 1611 has that. Yeah, see, this is where I have to go to, I think I'm going to have to go to the Strongs here to show you guys what I'm talking about. See, sometimes it's hard to see where they put Adonai into the text because they don't always go with the tradition of all caps versus all lowercase. So sometimes you have to actually go to the text. So let me just show you guys what I'm talking about here. So here. See, so the majority of the time, and translators will admit this to you, when it is a small capital and the rest lowercase LORD, the majority of the time that is from the Hebrew H136 Adonai. The majority of the time in the Masoretic text-based Bibles, they do that for Adonai. So what it's saying here, it's calling Yahuwah Adonai Yahuwah here is what it's doing. So it says, if the sword contempt even the rod, it shall no more, says Adonai Yahuwah. So the all capital God there, they actually substituted Yahuwah with that in the Masoretic there, of the King James 1611. Now, if you go to the Septuagint, which is interesting, again, I don't know why ABP does that. I don't know, it's not there in the text. Let me see here. Let me show you here. Greek OT plus. Okay, here we go. So we have here you go. Kurios right here. Theos. Or should be Theos. What is Theos not there? All right. This is interesting. So this version only has Kurios in the verse. Okay. Either way, you have Kurios here. Now the Bretons, according to the Bretons, it says Yahuwah for Kurios, and then you have Alua or Elohim for Theos here. So it would say in the original Hebrew, it seems to say, what if even the tribe be rejected? It shall not be, says Yahuwah Alua. The Vulgate as well has it reading like that. Let's see here. Where the heck is the Catholic public domain? There we go. Yep. For it has been tested in this one, when he will have overthrown the scepter and will not be, says Yahuwah Alua. So what it seems to show is that this this compound name Yahuwah Alua or Yahuwah Elohim is being used in both the Vulgate and the Septuagint, but not in the Masoretic. The Masoretic seems to have changed it to Adonai Yahuwah. So let's see here. So that's the end of that one. My bad, not Exodus. Ezekiel 31:8. LXX and the Vulgate again say paradise for the Garden of Eden. And again, this is important to understand because then when you start reading about what Yahushua says about paradise, there's no way he can be referring to heaven. So I think it's also important for us to look at the Septuagint to understand terminology of the Brit Hadashah. So there we go. Ezekiel 31 verse 8. So it says the cedars Here's the Vulgate all the way to the left here. The cedars in the paradise of Aluna were not higher than he was. So he's talking about this guy's, trying to think who he's talking about here. I think he's talking about the Assyrian here, and it's kind of comparing him to Satan, saying we're not higher than he was. The spruce trees were not equal to his summit. The plane trees were not equal to his fullness. No tree in the paradise of Alua was similar to him or to his beauty. So obviously we know this to be referring to Satan, even though it's talking about the Assyrian. We know who the Assyrian is. It's comparing him to Satan. There's like a parallel. And obviously you've seen the Masoretic, it says in the garden instead of paradise. So the Septuagint a lot will give you the meaning rather than the transliteration. It will tell you what these places mean, what the name of the place means, sometimes geographically. Sometimes the Septuagint, not all the time, it's not a full thought for thought translation like the NLT, but it tends to take a thought for thought many different times, where the Masoretic will give you transliteration. So that's like a minor difference there, is that instead of garden, the majority of the time it will say paradise. But you could make the argument that's really the same thing. It's just that the Septuagint is using the definition of what that place is. Ezekiel 31:10, Vulgate. Let's see. LXX and Vulgate lack Adonai again. Okay, so it would say Adonai Yahuwah, I guess, in the Masoretic there. So just check this real quick. Yeah. So yeah, now again, this is where you have to really go into the Strongs, like I said before, because you're not going to see it. Because sometimes the original KJV, I don't think, gave you any all caps on the LORD when it was Yahuwah, so that's where it gets a little confusing. Because not all translators hold on to the tradition of putting all caps LORD when Yahuwah's there, rather than Adonai. So you have to kind of go there to the Strongs. Yeah, see, this King James with the Strong shows you got Adonai there, H136, then H3069 Yahuwah there with the all caps. Now, comparing that to the Septuagint, where it just has Yahuwah, therefore it thus says Yahuwah. So that's interesting. Seems like the Masoretic actually added in the Adonai there. Rather than changing it, they actually added the word Adonai there. Let's see here. Where's the Vulgate as well? Okay, so he has, thus says Yahuwah Alua, since he was sublime in height, and he was made of summit, green and dense. So again, both the Vulgate and the Septuagint would seem to indicate that it's supposed to be Yahuwah there, not Adonai, in Ezekiel 31:10. Now we're at Ezekiel 31:11. The LXX and the Vulgate have ruler, most powerful one of the nations. The Masoretic text uses the prefix al or el, which is very weird. Sometimes you'll see that they'll use el or al, the prefix, the short prefix of the singular alua, as a name, which is really weird in my opinion. So it says here in Ezekiel 31:11, I have delivered him into the hands of the most powerful one among the Gentiles, so that he will deal with him. I have cast him out in accord with his irreverence. And what's funny is that the Septuagint and the Vulgate seem to give the idea that Yahuwah is handing over Satan to, like, a powerful prince or king. Where in the Masoretic, it would make it sound like Yahuwah is dealing with him himself. Now, according to the King James, it translates it as the mighty one of the heathen, so a deity of the heathen. But the problem is in the Masoretic Hebrew, people could get confused. Well, I guess with the heathen though gives you the context, but anyway, but the fact that it just says Al or L definitely doesn't help matters, I don't think. It gives you like really, really genericness, in my opinion. And actually, is this supposed to be Al or L? It says allele. Now, I always get confused with the Masoretic Hebrew because the spellings sometimes look similar. No, this is a different word than L. Okay, never mind. So, but what's weird is it can be used as for a oak or strong tree, mighty man, oak, post, ram, or tree. So I think the major difference here is the Septuagint and the Vulgate are being way more specific, and they're telling you it's a ruler of the nation. So it's talking about a prince or a king. So that's interesting. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this study. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out. And like we said last time, anyone that's trying to seek fellowship, feel free. But yeah, like I said before, when we started this second study for today, if you guys are feeling lost and stuff with trying to follow along, I recommend watch part 1 and part 2 of this series. And it will be listed, like I said, under the playlist, Proof of the Supremacy of the Septuagint. So that's going to be the name of this playlist. So this is going to be going into how other manuscripts prove the authenticity and give second and third witnesses to the Septuagint being far superior as authoritative versions of the Tanakh versus the Masoretic text. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully it was edifying. And to all of our brothers and sisters out there, have a great rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.